And welcome everyone. I'm very grateful I got the opportunity to hold this presentation. It's not every day I get to talk uninterrupted for 20 minutes about a project so dear to my heart. My name is Jakob Sinclair, and I'm a volunteer and activist for the Swedish Pirate Party. We're a political party that strongly believes in freedom, democracy, and privacy. This talk is not going to be as technical, maybe, as some others. It's going to be more of a story of our membership system and how it has evolved. And I thought a lot about how I wanted to start this talk. And why not start with one of the core beliefs in the pirate movement, how digitalization changes everything. The internet has changed all aspects of society, especially when it comes to organizing. Organizing can be very difficult, but nowadays it's not that complicated. For example, you want to organize a protest rally. You just create a Facebook event, invite some people, they can invite more people, and there you go. It's not that difficult anymore to reach out to a large mass with the internet. However, how you want to organize all depends on what the purpose is. Is the purpose to build a political movement or a political party? Then one Facebook event is probably not going to be enough. You want to somehow build and create a community. And traditionally, that has been done through creating an organization and having members of that organization. So people can join and they can attend different events, do different things inside of the organization. And that raises a question. How do you keep track of members? Traditionally, you used to just do it paper-based, but obviously this has some obvious limitations. But this was how it was done before the internet, before we had these digital tools to help us. But one of the main problems with having a paper-based approach is, how do I actually contact? How do I get in touch with my members? It's not something you can do very easily. You could, for example, have a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet works great, especially for smaller organizations. You can do a whole lot of things. If you want to send out a mail to all your members, you can just go to the mail column and select all mails and copy paste. Or you want to see where your members live in the country, you can just sort by town or region, or if you just have the information inside of the spreadsheet, it's probably going to work great. But there are still some limitations of the spreadsheet. It's still a very manual process. It's still really hard to do certain things. For example, if you want your members to be able to take their own initiative, you can't just give access to the entire spreadsheet to a member that wants to organize a local meetup. It's probably not a very good idea. And when it comes to bigger organizations, you start to see that it takes a lot of extra work when you do all of this manually. So therefore, you want to have a membership management system. Through the membership management system, you can keep track of all your memberships. You can send out mails directly, automatically to members. You can get all sort of interesting stats from it, and you can also design it so members can do their own things inside of the system, so they can take their own initiative, they can organize their own meetups, etc. And the reason why I wanted to start with this topic is because this point is really the main topic of this talk, the membership management system. So, Piratpartiet, the Swedish Pirate Party. The Swedish Pirate Party was founded in 2006 by a guy called Rick Falkvinge. In the beginning, the main focus and still one of the main focuses is privacy, and the battlefield at the time was copyright, actually, because governments and Hollywood didn't like that people were torrenting movies and stuff from the internet for free. So they wanted to have laws against that. But if you want to catch someone pirating something online, you basically need to surveil the entire internet, which is a huge privacy issue. And that's where the Swedish Pirate Party took the fight. And Rick Falkvinge, the founder of the Swedish Pirate Party, started work on a system called PirateWeb. And PirateWeb was a very unique system for its time, because it's a membership system that allowed you could join yourself. So there was a sign-up link. You got a mail automatically sent to you with information about the party and what you could do. You could directly see which local leaders, etc., was in your area, so you could contact them. You had to-do lists. You can log activism. You could manage conferences, even. Like, you could do a whole lot with this system. And this was in 2006, so it was very unique for its time. PirateWeb is still our current membership system, which is a little worrisome because it's 15 years old at this point. But there are some wisdoms we can take from PirateWeb. It was designed entirely after how the party operated at the time, which meant that we didn't have to change the way we worked because of a membership system. We could work the way we wanted, and the system was molded after the party. It was access-based, so you could have a lot of different roles. You can have local leaders. You can have like board members, etc. And all of these have different permissions and accesses inside of the system. And there were tons of functions, including financial and accounting functionality. But the UI, user experience, wasn't always the best. There was no real API, so very hard to do integration, no single sign-on. That is actually a little bit of a lie, but basically no single sign-on. And work slowed down on it after 2014. And that meant outdated functions and very little bug fixing, which is, yeah, not great. And sometimes you just had weird behavior, and it's kind of worrisome. And I mentioned 2014, so something happened that year, and that was a bit of a crash and the rebuild of the Swedish Pirate Party. 2009, we got 2 seats in the EU Parliament, and 2014, we both had EU elections and Swedish elections. So we lost our 2 seats in the EU Parliament in the EU election, which meant that people were very disappointed, and a lot of active members got burnout. It hit us really hard. And after the disappointing results in the EU election, everyone thought the Swedish elections were gonna go shit. They went shit, which didn't help. So in 2015, after a lot of people had left, a rebuild of the party was started. And a lot of the old IT infrastructure were replaced. So we had a lot of systems that were home built, and these were replaced with more off-the-shelf systems. However, one major system remained in place. So, searching for a replacement for PirateWeb. We didn't want to build our own system because we don't want a repeat of PirateWeb. The problem when you build your own system is that you often have a very active member who builds it, and then when that person leaves the party, you don't have anyone to maintain that system anymore. And that's what's happened with PirateWeb. So we wanted to find an off-the-shelf system, and that is way harder than it actually seems. One big aspect was that we are entirely funded by donations. So we don't have that much money. So we can't, for example, pay for an enterprise system. And also paying for an enterprise system often has other problems with data and privacy and so forth. But yeah. Some alternatives we looked at was CiviCRM, which is an open source project, but it didn't really work the way we wanted it to work. It wasn't really set up to manage an organization like us. Another project we looked at was EBOS, which is a Swedish system that is used a lot for Swedish board game organizations, etc. And it's actually developed by a national organization for culture and gaming here in Sweden. The problem is it's very expensive. And we also looked at Tendency, which is another open source system. But however, it wanted us to have its website through the system. So it wanted us to have like a front-facing website. And then the membership system was when you logged in, which we didn't really want. We already had a website, so it tried to force something we didn't really need. And this is how Ory fits into the picture. Ory was actually found by accident by us, by our party secretary. And we had already started talking a bit of maybe we need to build a new system anyways. And when we found Ory, that cemented the idea. Because Kratos and Hydra was exactly what we were looking for. A login system that had support for OAuth and OpenID, so we could have single sign-on and easier integration, thanks to Hydra. And Kratos handles a lot of the login and account handling, which is great because that means we don't have to build that ourselves. We can focus more on our own tools. And they're open source, which is perfect, exactly what we're looking for. We love open source. We're big advocates for open source. And that's our really big reason why we chose Ory. And we're free to use our own technology stack. We're not stuck with something. We can use whatever we want because Ory is based on APIs. And therefore, we started our new membership management system, MemberPort. So MemberPort is meant is somewhere next year. It's still a bit ways to go, but sorry, I forgot a bit what to say. But anyways. Some of the benefits of using Ory, development of the login system doesn't depend on us, which is really, really great. That means that we still get new features, we still get bug fixes, we still get security fixes, and it doesn't depend that one of us is actively maintaining MemberPort. We can just update the Ory inside of the project. And we can design our own UI however we want. Hydra and Kratos doesn't care. It doesn't force anything on us, which is amazing. It's very few projects that actually work like that. And it's extremely easy to file bug reports and fixes. I have submitted fixes myself to Kratos. It's just open a pull request like you usually do. And having direct contact with developers is a really big plus because we're not customers in the traditional sense. We're building our own system. We're maintaining our own project. So we are developers ourselves, which means that we don't really want to talk to another support group. If we want to talk to the developers directly. And this makes a lot of things so much easier. Feature requests, same there. We can just do a feature request, and the Ory developers will see it directly. And because it's open source, it means we can host it ourselves, which is a huge plus. Political membership is extremely sensitive data, which means that we don't want it to get in the wrong hands. We want to keep control of it as much as possible, and be able to self-host is a big requirement for us. And Ory also forces good security practices. By that I mean that our system in itself is not secure by default just because we use Ory. But Kratos, for example, has all these login flows, registration flows, etc. And these are designed with security principles in mind, which means that when we use Ory, we don't have to worry as much, because a lot of the common attack vectors are already handled by the login flow, for example, which means that we can't just, not care about security, but a lot of things are given to us directly, which is great. However, there are still some challenges ahead. First, we actually still need to build the rest of the system. Easier said than done. Kratos is still in early development. It's coming along very nicely, but we had periods of time where our development slowed down because we were waiting for new features in Kratos to be released. This is a bit unrelated to Ory, but not all of our existing IT systems support OpenID Connect, which means that we may have to look at new systems if we want a single sign-on for everything, which we want, because having a new member sign up for 5 different accounts just to get access to everything is not the best experience. We want our members to have a single pirate account that gives access to everything. And something that I find a bit interesting is how do you sync data between our system and Kratos? Because Kratos has its own database where it stores account information, but all of the other information that we have in our system, like membership information or event information, etc., like how do we make sure that the data stays in sync so nothing weird happens? In our system, for example, we have geography saved in the database because we want to be able to send out mails based on geography. So I can say, I want to send a mail to every member in this region. But how do we make sure that the account information actually in Kratos includes a valid geography instance, for example? It's something that hasn't been a real problem so far. We have managed it, but it's something that we have to keep in mind at least. And some future developments is that two-factor authentication. Kratos actually had a release this week, I think Wednesday, where it actually released a 0.8 alpha, which included two-factor authentication. So thanks for that. We've been waiting for that for quite some time now. We haven't really tested Kratos and Hydra in a real deployment. I have configured it myself on my development machine, but actually doing it in a more real-life scenario is something that we still have to try out. This is something internally entire to memberport, but a huge amount of work has gone into geography and defining organizations and getting them to play together. And by that I mean that, for example, we have local organizations already in the real world. So we want local organizations in our system that is visible to all members living in that area, but hey, you can join this local organization. And a lot of work is still required for that to work nicely with each other, so that we can define that, hey, this organization is for this area, and that we can define regions ourselves that are like, hey, all municipalities here are included in this area, for example. So it's some work still left doing there, but it's getting along at least. We want more member-focused features that we still need to implement, like events. You can post events and people can sign up. We can, when we have internal elections for different roles, that members can automatically candidate for roles inside of the system. And maybe have a point system for recruitment. We actually, for the 2019 EU election, we actually had our own IT system called PirateWeb, the Pirate Hunt, which was actually a really cool system, because on all of our posters we had QR codes that you could scan, and you get points for scanning the posters, for first putting the posters up, and then you get points for every person who scans the QR code. And this is one example of how digitalization can changes everything, because you can gamify a lot of things. So you can gamify activism, you can gamify recruitment, so that members get points, etc., for recruitment. In conclusion, organizing a political movement across a country is hard, but it's made a lot easier thanks to the internet and having a good system in place for handling all of the members. And it's very rare to find a good membership system in the wild that just works out of the box. Either you need to do a lot of configuration yourself, or you need to build your own system. And the Ory's open source focus is extremely important, because it enables us to be able to build these systems much easier. And the system we're building, MemberPort, is itself open source. When you're a non-profit organization, it's really hard to pay for these enterprise editions, etc., or enterprise licenses. Even if they have different licenses for non-profit organizations, it can still be really hard to afford that. So having something open source and free to use is really important for us. We still obviously have some challenges ahead of us, but things are moving along, and hopefully we can retire PirateWeb at sometime next year. All right. And one important thing of Ory's work for us is that we get to focus on what is important to us. We don't have to care about the login system. We don't have to care about the registration of new members, etc. Ory handles a large part of that, which means that we can actually focus on building the tools we need, building the community tools that doesn't exist in the wild, that's unique for us. And that's something I'm very grateful for. Thanks everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.